Good evening and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance, and coming up, President Trump discussing the Russia-Ukraine war with the leaders of both countries. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth suggesting that Ukraine will have to take some losses to close a peace deal with Russia. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard now confirmed as the nation's intel chief. Which single Republican senator voted against her? Plus, Pam Bondi's first action as United States Attorney General. Declassifying federal secrets. That's what a new task force established by the House Oversight Committee will be focusing on. We'll hear from Chairman of that committee, James Comer, in what we can expect.
This is Capitol Report, live from our global headquarters in our nation's capital. Here's Steve Lance.
President Trump making moves to end the Ukraine war, calling on both the Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today to end it. Joining us now live with more information is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. Tell us more about what President Trump had to say.
Good evening to you as well, Steve. Today, President Trump says he held very positive phone calls with both the leaders of Ukraine and Russia. And he says that both leaders want to bring peace and end the war. Here's President Trump talking about it during the swearing-in ceremony for Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. Watch.
No, we had a great call, and it lasted for a long time, over an hour this morning. I also had with President Zelensky a very good call after that. And I think we're on the way to getting peace. I think President Putin wants peace, and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
You made a statement about your legacy of wanting to be remembered as a peacemaker. But to have a president and commander-in-chief who recognizes the cost of that sacrifice and ensuring that war is the last resort, not the first. So thank you for your leadership.
Meanwhile, President Trump also says that he does not think it's practical for Ukraine to join NATO, adding that he thinks it's unlikely that Ukraine will get its 2014 borders back, while he thinks Ukraine will get some of its land back. And Trump and Putin, meanwhile, has agreed to visit each other's countries, and President Trump saying today that actually before that, he might meet Putin first in Saudi Arabia. Steve.
Certainly some developments there we'll be watching closely. Iris, especially as we see another American citizen released today from Belarus, a close ally of Russia. This coming after Mark Fogel was released yesterday from Russia. Tell us, President Trump also talked about some of the legal challenges back here in our own country that his administration is now facing. What are the details here?
Sure. So the White House today is criticizing some of the judges for trying to stop President Trump's actions across the country, of course, including, for example, his attempt to slash the federal government's size and let go of some federal workers. The White House calls it a continuation of the weaponization of justice systems against President Trump. And President Trump also talking about it today during the swearing-in ceremony and saying that he will comply with the law but will appeal some of this decisions. Watch.
But we're being hindered by courts where they file in certain courts where it's very hard to win, and a judge will stop us, and a judge will say that it doesn't make any difference what you find. You just keep paying the money. That's a hell of a way to be. And I follow the courts. I have to follow the law. All it means is that we appeal. But that gives people time to cover their tracks.
Meanwhile, in the latest turn here, a judge in Boston has now greenlighted President Trump administration's federal worker buyout program, allowing it now to proceed. The White House press secretary, in response, calls it the first of many legal wins for President Trump, adding that this goes to show that lawfare, quote, will not ultimately prevail over the will of 77 million Americans who supported President Trump and his policies.
Lots of news coming out of the White House today. NTD's Iris Tao live from the North Lawn. Thank you. The Senate voting this morning to confirm Tulsi Gabbard as the Director of National Intelligence. This after Democrats ran out the clock debating the nomination.
Ms. Gabbard is a
Despite
patriot.
Democrat.
She's someone who's motivated by service. And she's been serving her country and community since she was 21 years old when she was elected to the Hawaii State Legislature. And after her first session in the Hawaii Legislature, she enlisted in the Army National Guard.
But there are certain times you have to buck and stand up and say, no, this is just a very bad choice for America. And the nomination of Ms. Gabbard is simply one of those. I plead with my colleagues, I know it's the last minute, to think twice, to vote no, as we all will vote.
Despite Democratic opposition and after 30 hours of debate with 52 votes in favor and 48 against, Gabbard was confirmed. Former Senate leader Mitch McConnell, Republican senator, voted against the confirmation. He was the only Republican defector. Gabbard, a former Democratic congresswoman and veteran, is Trump's 14th nominee to be confirmed since January 20th. And United States Attorney General Pam Bondi just announcing a new lawsuit against the state of New York for protecting illegal immigrants from arrest. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us now live. Good evening, Jack. So what is the DOJ alleging here?
Well, they're suing New York over their so-called sanctuary city laws. They've already done this with Illinois. And these laws prevent law enforcement from arresting illegal immigrants, essentially. Bondi said that the DOJ filed the suit against the state of New York, as well as Governor Kathy Hochul, Attorney General Letitia James, and State DMV Commissioner Mark Schroeder. And that's because the DMV has this green light law, saying that Bondi says that these green light laws prevent law enforcement from accessing an individual's immigration status. Take a look.
New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today. Millions of illegal aliens with violent records have flooded into our communities, bringing violence and deadly drugs with them.
Now, the DOJ filed a similar lawsuit against Illinois for such sanctuary city laws just last week. And in announcing this lawsuit today, Bondi was joined by the mother of Kayla Hamilton. She's a 20-year-old who was raped and killed by an illegal immigrant, an MS-13 gang member from El Salvador. Watch.
And he had a criminal record in 2020 in El Salvador for illicit gang activity. He came over as an unoccupied alien child, saying that he was afraid of gang activity in his country. Health and Human Services called him a nice boy, and he showed age-appropriate behavior. That fell so wrong when he murdered my daughter.
Now, on top of all this, last week, Bondi also ordered the DOJ to pause all funds to all sanctuary cities. Now, it's not clear how long this pause is, but in the meantime, the DOJ is reviewing any contracts in those cities that may break the law. Now, federal law prohibits state and local governments from blocking immigration officers from accessing an individual's citizenship status. But several sanctuary cities have policies that restrict local authorities from cooperating with federal immigration officers. Now, Bondi's ordered the DOJ to investigate all of those incidents, Steve.
And Jack, AG Bondi has also directed federal officials to review the prosecution of President Trump and those allegedly involved in the January 6th Capitol breach. What's the latest on this?
Right. So, Steve, just last week, Bondi also established the Weaponization Working Group to look into the possible weaponization of the DOJ by former special counsel Jack Smith and his team, who investigated and charged President Trump. Now, they're looking into whether they were working to achieve political objectives through improper means rather than pursuing justice. Now, the group is also looking into the ethicality of the January 6th prosecutions, as well as the prosecutions of people charged for protesting at or near abortion clinics, as well as possible retaliation against whistleblowers. Steve.
NTD's Jack Bradley, thank you. Moments ago, I spoke with James Comer, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, to discuss a new task force aimed at declassifying federal secrets. We also talked about his new book, All of the President's Money, and his investigations into the Biden family's financial dealings. Chairman James Comer, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, Chairman. You just announced it's a bipartisan task force on the declassification of federal secrets. Talk to us about this and what it will ultimately do for the American people.
I think this is important, and this is something that Donald Trump talked about. He wants to declassify things like the RFK and JFK files, the Martin Luther King files. But we also need to go further. There's lots of federal secrets that people are curious about. Secrets about COVID and what the government did in the beginning and how the government could have said that COVID came from that wet market in China when we now know that it came from the lab in Wuhan. What role did the government have? Who did the government talk to? How did they base that decision? And why did they attack conservatives and go to Twitter and Facebook and have them deplatform and censor anyone that would suggest that COVID came from the lab in Wuhan? We want to declassify information on September the 11th, on the assassinations and different things that what went on in Roswell, New Mexico, and things like that. The American people have lost confidence in the government, and if we're going to restore confidence and save our democracy, and preserve our democracy, rather, we're going to have to be transparent with the American people. Now, there are some things that maybe the government shouldn't turn over because it would create, national security concerns or whatever. But there's a lot of stuff the government's just sitting on because some bureaucrat decided we're just going to sit on it. We're not going to let the American people. They don't have any right to know, and that's not true. The American people have every right to know. If something happened, with the Trump assassination attempt, maybe they're still investigating that. Maybe that doesn't need to be turned over. But the Kennedy assassinations and the Martin Luther King assassinations and anything pertaining to September the 11th, anything
about
UFOs, that's a big one. American people are curious, so let's start turning this stuff over to the people who own it. And that's the American people. The American people operate the government. They elect their leaders, and let's just be transparent and restore confidence in government, and that's what the task force goal is.
You launched this with your colleague, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. What can we expect to see in terms of hearings, certain investigations?
Yeah.
Tell us what to anticipate.
Well, she's going to try to get as much declassified as possible on all of our federal secrets. The Epstein files, everybody wants to know about that. Why? We're going to try. And Luna has already reached out to the White House, and they're going to find out how persistent she is. And I think it's a task force that will just be very widely viewed. I think people are very interested in a lot of the topics.
Congressman, you've written a new book, All the President's Money. It's very well researched. Obviously, you have a lot of resources in your work, and you've done it. It's an extensive investigation into former President Biden's financial dealings with foreign countries, predating his presidency as well. What ways did you find this directly impacting American policy?
Well, the book is about the entire investigation. It's a forensic analysis of who sent the Bidens money, what the Bidens did when they got the money, how they had these financial schemes, what the banks called money laundering, and how they laundered the money through various accounts, and then it would end up in 10 different Biden family members' bank accounts. I think it's the biggest public corruption scandal of my lifetime. It didn't get the press that it should have. A lot of the media were downright dishonest. Every time we would find out new information, damning information, we would have smoking gun after smoking gun, and a lot of the mainstream media would just misreport and disinform their viewers on what we had. It inspired me to write the book.
To your point, you also gave an example in your book about how President Biden canceled the FBI's China initiative. Yes. Talk to us about China targeting children of politicians specifically in purchasing of political influence.
China has a big policy called Belt and Road Initiative, where they try to go into countries and become a dominant. They want to become the worldwide economic superpower. What the United States is today, China wants to be in the very near future. And they have the potential to do that. They're going into these third world countries. They're either bribing the politicians or bribing the family members, children of the politicians. If they see a politician that's notoriously corrupt, they try to bribe them. If they see a family member that's got a drug problem or got some kind of susceptibility to take a bribe, then they do that with the child, and this gives them leverage over that political regime, over the government, and they're able to do things. And one of the first things that Joe Biden did when he was president was he canceled the China Initiative, which was an FBI operation to investigate the China influence campaign in our universities. The FBI had been investigating this, and Joe Biden goes in and cancels it. He says it's racist. You're racially profiling these people, and we're going to stop it. And I find that odd that he would do that. And I wonder if the $8 million that we found that his family took from China would have had an impact on that, and I think it would, and I write about that in the book.
Zooming out to the intelligence community, how has the bureaucratic structure resulted in the state that we find ourselves in today?
Well, the state that we found ourselves in today is the American people have no confidence in our intelligence community. There have been a lot of high-profile intelligence failures over the last 2 decades, going back to the intelligence community saying Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and they didn't. Well, that's unfortunate because we fought a war over there, over the belief from our intelligence community that they had weapons of mass destruction. We're still paying for that war today. We'll be paying for that war for the rest of my life. And you go to what they did to Trump and say that, oh, there's Russian disinformation. We have this Steele dossier. Then we learn the Steele dossier was created by opposition research firm paid for by the Clintons. Then you see the Hunter Biden laptop. 51 intelligence officials sign a letter saying the laptop's Russian disinformation, when we know that several on that list knew that they knew that it was legitimate, that it was not Russian disinformation. That's a form of election interference. We've got to have a reset. And I think that John Radcliffe at the CIA and I think that Kash Patel at the FBI are the right guys to go in there and reform it. The majority of the employees in the FBI and the CIA are exceptional, but the ones at the top, they need to go. And it's not just the political hires, it's also the civil servants at the top. I hope that they're able to clean house and just hit the reset button and try to regain the trust of not just Congress, but the American people.
Chairman of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, James Comer, really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
President Trump now says negotiations to end the war in Ukraine will start immediately. This after his 90-minute call with Russian President Vladimir Putin this morning. Trump also securing the release today of another American hostage among 3 hostages from Belarus. Joining me now to discuss these latest developments is Javed Ali. Javed, great to have you with us here. 3 hostages were just released from Belarus, including an American. How significant is this, and does it signify Russia's willingness to negotiate a deal to end its war with Ukraine?
Well, nice to be with you this evening. And the latest news about the hostage release, or the prisoner swaps from Belarus and with Mr. Vogel over the weekend from Russia, to me suggests that President Putin is now in a position where he is willing to make these concessions to enter into what will probably be a very complex negotiation to end the war in Ukraine. And the call apparently today with President Trump, I'm sure they explored some initial sort of aspects of how those negotiations might go. And President Trump also announced the key folks in his team who will be driving those from the U.S. side. So a lot to unfold in the coming days and weeks. But yes, the exchange from today is just yet another example of this willingness we're apparently now seeing from President Putin.
And now, after that lengthy 90-minute call with Russian President Putin today, President Trump says negotiations to end the Ukraine war will start immediately. What kind of role are you expecting the United States and other EU nations to play in helping to end this war? And what do these negotiations look like internally?
Well, President Trump apparently announced the members of his team, which I talked about. So it'll be some combination of Steve Witkoff, whose name we have heard publicly is being heavily involved in the negotiations for the Israel-Hamas ceasefire, John Ratcliffe as the CIA director, Mike Waltz as the National Security Advisor, Secretary of State Rubio. So, these major figures in the Trump national security and foreign policy world are going to be representing the U.S. When it comes to these discussions. And part of the sort of questions going forward is, what will President Putin be willing to accept on the Russian side, and what likewise will President Zelensky be willing to accept on the Ukrainian side? And part of that might be the loss of a significant amount of Ukrainian territory in which Russian troops have captured or have a military presence right now. But that might be the condition that stops the military campaign from Russia and all the brutal fighting that's been taking place.
Now, one of the unintended consequences or negative side effects from this war was that it seems to have maybe pushed Russian President Putin into the arms of some of America's greatest adversaries, that of Xi Jinping of China, as well as North Korea. How do you see Trump's foreign policy impacting Russia's strategic alliances with some of these other foreign adversaries, such as China, Iran, and North Korea?
Right, and that's been another one of these unintended consequences of this now 3-year-long war between Russia and Ukraine. And it has driven Russia into closer relationships with China, Iran, and North Korea. I'm not sure anyone anticipated that at the beginning. I certainly didn't, going back to the Russian invasion of Ukraine from February 2022. And now the question is President Putin willing to walk away from some of those partnerships that have allowed Russia to keep fighting these past few years with China, Iran, and North Korea, and all the weapons and lethal support and aid? Certainly that the Iranians and the North Koreans have supplied. China has been more on the technology and sort of as a market for Russian oil and gas. So these are all going to be aspects of the negotiation as well, I would have to imagine, is that President Putin is going to have to make some concessions. And part of those concessions may be sort of winding down on these partnerships he's made with the countries we just talked about.
Focusing now on the Middle East, President Trump doubling down on his statement that, quote, all hell will break loose in Gaza if the terrorist group Hamas doesn't free the remaining hostages by Saturday. Do you think Hamas is going to comply? And what do you expect to come out of this?
So based on everything that's been happening the past few days with the latest hostages, the 3 hostages who were returned by Hamas, and then the prisoners who were exchanged, the Hamas prisoners who were exchanged by Israel, that has led to this current stalemate where both sides are sort of digging in and saying there may be a pause now on this. And President Trump on Sunday making the claim that if now Hamas doesn't release all the remaining hostages they have under the control, that statement that all hell will break loose, or to paraphrase that. I suspect what that means, though, is if Hamas truly intends to not release the remaining hostages, even by the deadline that President Trump outlined for this Saturday, that probably means that the Israeli military will resume the sort of grinding operations that they were engaged in for 16 months against Hamas in the aftermath of October 7th. And that would put an end to the ceasefire, obviously. Wouldn't, perhaps in the immediate term, lead to the return of the remaining hostages. So a lot is at play over the next couple of days to see what will happen. Will one of the sides blink? And if so, what does that mean in terms of a resumption of fighting and hostilities in the Gaza Strip?
Javed Ali, appreciate your insights. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the United States doesn't support Ukraine joining NATO. He also suggests that Ukraine will have to take some losses to close a peace deal with Russia.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support, and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented MyPillow. MyPillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all three.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King MyPillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic MyPillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste, and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
And welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is in Brussels today, saying Ukraine should not join the NATO alliance. He's the first official of the new Trump administration to visit the NATO headquarters, and NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar brings us more from his trip.
The bloodshed must stop, and this war must end.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. wants to end the fighting in Ukraine. In opening remarks at a meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, the Defense Secretary suggests Ukraine will have to take some losses in order to close a peace deal with Russia.
We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
He says the goal of returning to pre-2014 borders in Ukraine was, quote, illusionary. Hegseth also talked about Ukraine's NATO ambitions.
The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops.
He added that peacekeepers in Ukraine should be deployed only as a non-NATO mission. The defense secretary also made clear that no U.S. troops would go to Ukraine. Also on Wednesday, the U.S. Treasury Secretary met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv.
This is my first official trip abroad, and it should be a strong signal that the war is a top priority for the Trump administration.
President Trump says he wants Ukraine to use its rare earth minerals as a guarantee it will pay back the money the U.S. has sent. This way, the U.S. might also continue sending military aid. Zelensky on Wednesday told reporters that the U.S. had presented a first draft of an agreement.
We believe that it provides the further guarantees for the Ukraine people of American assistance.
The document is scheduled to be presented at the Munich Security Conference later this week. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
The Trump administration has rolled back $80 million in FEMA funds for housing illegal immigrants in hotels in New York City. This comes just one day after the Department of Homeland Security fired those involved in making that payment. City officials are now asking Mayor Eric Adams to take legal action against the Trump administration. In response, Adams says on X that his office has already, quote, engaged with the White House about recouping these funds. He added that officials have, quote, requested an emergency meeting with FEMA to try and resolve the matter as quickly as possible. Criticism of the funding began to pick up on Monday. This after Elon Musk said FEMA spent nearly $60 million to house illegal immigrants in New York City hotels. Coming up, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene leading the first ever hearing of the House DOJ subcommittee. This amid growing tensions between DOJ and congressional Democrats. And how much is Medicaid fraud costing Americans? We'll speak with a former senior FBI official who testified at the DOJ hearing earlier today after the break.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-6782. 800-360-6782.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome back to NTD's Capitol Report. The first hearing today for the House Subcommittee on Delivering on Government Efficiency. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, has more.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene was selected by Speaker of the House Mike Johnson to chair the newly created subcommittee on delivering on government efficiency. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican from Georgia, highlighted the bipartisan nature and mission of this subcommittee.
This is not a Democrat problem. This is not a Republican problem. This is an American problem. Over the next decade, total interest payments are projected to be $13.8 trillion.
House Democrats charged House Republicans with being complicit in what they called the hacking of the U.S. federal payment system by Elon Musk.
Congressman, is there anything right now that the subcommittee might be working on where Democrats want to pitch in and also cut in these savings?
Well, we'd love to talk about efficiency. I mean, everyone is interested in government efficiency. This is not government efficiency. This is actually just cutting programs, cutting benefits. There are actually ways of saving resources and saving money. One of those ways is not to give billionaires a huge tax cut.
House Republican spending hogs believe that the work of the Department of Government Efficiency led by Elon Musk is critical in tandem with the new subcommittee on delivering on government efficiency.
Democrats are calling what Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency is doing a constitutional crisis. What would be your response to that?
I'd say we got a spending crisis. They're just, as I've stated, the gravy train's on biscuit wheels, and it's getting ready to run off the track. The gravy spigot's about to turn off, and you're going to see a lot of members of Congress squealing.
House Republicans highlighted abuse, fraud, and waste in government spending as the main mission of this subcommittee.
And lastly, Congressman, what do you think the subcommittee should focus on first?
Medicaid's a great spot. We just identified $200 billion in savings. That's a great place to start.
It's worth mentioning that House Republicans unveiled this Wednesday their budget resolution to kickstart the reconciliation process. In this budget resolution, House Republicans outlined at least $2 trillion in government spending cuts. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
So what is the fourth branch of government that President Trump and Elon Musk have been sounding the alarm over? And what are some examples of waste that DOGE has found thus far? Joining me now to assess these latest developments is Stuart Whitson, Senior Director of the Federal Affairs Foundation for Government Accountability and former senior official at the FBI. Stuart Whitson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you with us, Stuart. You were up on the Hill today testifying before Congress. At the hearing, you highlighted Medicaid fraud and mismanagement. Talk to us about the program and how it shifted from its original goals.
So Medicaid started off as a program for the truly needy, so senior citizens, disabled, and children in poverty. And what happened, what we saw is with the Biden administration, starting with the Obama administration, in the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, we started to see a massive expansion of Medicaid to what we call able-bodied adults. And so that's not those seniors, those older people, or the people that actually truly need the program. And so that started, President Trump came in and kind of tailed some of that back, but then the Biden administration happened. And so when Biden came into office, he instituted a number of measures. One was called the Streamlining Medicaid Rule. And basically what it did is made it really hard for states to remove ineligible enrollees. So folks that, if you look at the law and it kind of lays out the rules, here's what you need to meet in order to qualify for this benefit, millions of people didn't meet that requirement. And so what Biden did is passed a new rule that kept those people on the rolls. And so that's kind of where we're at now. The Medicaid program right now, the amount of improper payments that happens in Medicaid is a third of all the improper payments across the government. And get this, over 10 years, it's going to cost taxpayers $1 trillion. So that's $1 trillion going to people that shouldn't even be on the program.
I want to get your thoughts. I feel like most reasonable-minded taxpayers would look at this initiative and say, heck yeah. What do you think it is that some of the detractors are motivated by? Is it political? How are they seeing this, and how would you address their concerns?
So I think on the Medicaid front, this has been a pet project of the left for years now, is universal health care. They want to expand one set of healthcare, government-controlled healthcare, to as many people as they can. And why would they want to do that? Because they want to put people on put them into the trap of government dependency so that they can keep themselves in office. And so can be the only motivation behind it, because they're literally taking people that don't qualify for the program and trying to find ways to keep them on the program.
You mentioned, the biggest issue are eligibility errors. Can you explain that in more detail?
Yeah, so there's a number of factors that you have to meet in order to qualify for Medicaid. And some of those are based on, your age. You also can't be in prison, you can't be in jail, you can't be dead, you can't be an illegal immigrant.
Is it true there's people that are on the rolls that are technically would be 150 years old?
That's absolutely true. And so that's the problem. And then the other thing is you can't collect Medicaid benefits in 2 states at the same time. And then there's other factors. And so all those factors come into play. And so that's what we're trying to do, is get as many of those ineligible folks off the rolls so that we can free up the resources we have for the truly needy, for the people that actually need Medicaid.
Now, aside from the Medicaid issue, what are some examples of wasteful spending that you see DOGE prioritizing, or maybe that they should prioritize, and what stood out to you from maybe some of the other panelists and issues that they brought up?
Well, so DOGE, remember, they're just getting started, right? The president has been in office for all of 3 weeks, and already they've outlined a litany of wasteful, harmful, reckless spending. To rattle off a few, you've got over 52 million, I think it was, going to luxury hotels in New York
for illegal
immigrants to house them. That went out after President Trump was in office, despite his clear order to the entrenched bureaucracy not to do that. You also have over $30,000 spent on a transgender comic book in Peru. And the list goes on. But what do all these wasteful spending things have in common? They've got a couple. One is they're all pet projects of the left. So they're using federal taxpayer dollars and they're advancing their own little political pet projects on the side. But the other thing they have in common is even more devious. It's every single one of these wasteful instances of spending had to be approved by an unelected bureaucrat. So someone in USAID, someone in the State Department, someone in some other agency had to approve and then actually fund, hit enter, send that check off of this wasteful spending. And so it illustrates an even bigger point that goes alongside the wasteful spending, and that's this: personnel is policy. And so it's not enough to just cut the wasteful spending. You've also got to cut the entrenched bureaucrats that are hitting enter and hitting go and sending off the wasteful spending. And so that's kind of the other problem.
How do we prevent this kind of spending again? One bill proposed that you have highlighted is the REINS Act. How would this work and what would this do?
In a nutshell, what it does is it says that if the White House, executive branch agencies, want to pass a new rule, which is basically the equivalent of a law. So if they want to pass this new thing that is the equivalent of a law that costs more than $100 million, then they got to make sure Congress is okay with it first. This doesn't apply to every single decision the federal agencies are making, just these big, massive decisions. If you're going to pass a rule that impacts the lives of millions of people across the country, costs over $100 million, you got to just make sure that Congress approves that first. And so why this is so important is because all these great things that DOGE is identifying and cutting out, the president has the power to slash these and get rid of them with the stroke of a pen. But guess what? This is the one problem with DOGE, right? The next administration that comes in has that same power to re-up that frivolous spending, that wasteful spending. And so how do you make DOGE reforms more permanent? You pass the REINS Act.
You also say that it's more than just cutting the spending, finding the fraud. It's also addressing it at its root, which would be cutting some of these programs, and also, as Elon Musk put it in the Oval Office yesterday, the fourth branch of government, which is the bureaucracy. Talk to us about the bureaucracy. You spent 10 years at the FBI, so you know a little bit about it.
Over the course of time, a fourth branch of government has emerged, and we call that the administrative state. And the reason we call it a fourth branch of government is because it exercises all of those powers that the individual branches of government exercise. So it actually writes its own laws, but it doesn't call them laws, it calls them rules or regulations. It enforces those laws with what are called administrative, courts, within the agencies, with the FBI, with other folks like that, it enforces laws. And then before the post-Chevron decision, which some viewers might be familiar with, the Loper-Bright decision, they could interpret those laws. And so that part has kind of gone away. The administrative state has been weakened, but now it's time for Congress to weaken the rest and kind of reclaim its power. They also have what's called the power of the purse. And so they are supposed to be the ones that approve funding for big projects. And so right now, the way it's happening, if you look at the Biden administration, he spent more than $1.7 trillion on rules that he never ran past Congress. So unilaterally increased food stamps, and he just did it with mere guidance, just a stroke of a pen. He canceled student loans arbitrarily. The Supreme Court struck it down, and what did he do? He did it anyway, right? If you want to rein in out of control spending and return power to Congress, then that's where the REINS Act comes into play, and that's how you can kind of rein in the administrative state. Most of these federal agencies, the headquarters, are planted in the heart of left-leaning strongholds. And so you build these federal agencies, you populate them with a workforce that is, predominantly left. It's not even close. And actually, my colleague Hayden DeBlois is coming out with a groundbreaking piece of research that breaks down the different numbers. But in take welfare agencies, for example, the average SESer, which is a high-ranking administrative person that's not elected but gets to make a lot of decisions, they have a 60-point advantage on the Democrat side versus Republican. And so in all the other agencies, it's the same. And so you have that phenomenon going on where you have basically, a mass of folks that naturally oppose anything a conservative president is doing. There's also the more quiet stuff going on, the slow rolling of policy that the president wants to do, or just, if he asks them to do something, not carrying that out and just quietly letting it go away. So there's all that kind of stuff. And so that's why it's so important for the president to deliver the agenda he promised to the American people. He has to have people that will faithfully execute his agenda.
Stuart Whitson, really appreciate your insights and perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Trump has been elected chairman of the Kennedy Center Board of Trustees. He made the announcement earlier today on Truth Social, saying it was a unanimous vote. The venue confirmed Trump's statement and announced its new board membership. The new crew includes several Trump appointees, such as Second Lady Usha Vance, top White House aides Dan Scavino, and Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. On Monday, Trump appointed Rick Grinnell to lead the Kennedy Center, saying the former Intel official shares his vision for a, quote, golden age of American arts and culture. And coming up, Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency are aiming to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. We'll hear from folks in D.C. about how they think when we return.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。 所以我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
Come to Mathis Home today and save big during our presidential savings event with markdowns in every department. We've got all the latest looks for every room in your house at incredible savings. Get huge discounts on hundreds of sofas in all the latest styles. Or shop online and find an unbeatable selection of over 230,000 items. We've got it all. For great quality, all the latest styles, and best value, come to the presidential savings event at Mathis Home.
And welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. The Federal Reserve in the hot seat for a second day on Capitol Hill, this time in front of the House Financial Committee. Fed Chair Jerome Powell was questioned on the national debt and inflation. NTD correspondent Jason Blair brings us more.
It's the second day for Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell testifying in front of Congress, this time in front of the House, for the Fed's semi-annual report to Congress. Inflation and debt were up for discussion. Representative Norman asked Mr. Powell what he thought about the nation's long-term debt situation.
We're on an unsustainable path, and the debt level isn't unsustainable, but the path is sustainable, and certainly it's past time for Congress to work on that. But that's what I can say. I can't say more than that.
And inflation hit 3%. That's according to the latest data by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This also came up in the hearing.
We're close, but not there on inflation. And you did see today's inflation print, which says the same thing. I mean, we've made great progress toward 2%. Last year, inflation was 2.6%. So great progress, but we're not quite there yet.
President Trump said that he thinks the interest rates should be lowered and that it would go hand in hand with tariffs. Mr. Powell was asked about this statement by Rep. Sherman, whether this statement by the president or any other elected official would influence the Fed's actions. And Powell responded with a pretty decisive no. Again, Chair Powell did pretty much repeat what he said in the Senate, that the Fed is in no hurry to adjust interest rates.
We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too slowly or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment.
And Rep. Sherman also asked Mr. Powell if across-the-board tariffs would increase the cost of living. Mr. Powell responded saying that he didn't want to speculate and the Fed would wait until the exact policy information came out to make any comment. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
Just yesterday, President Trump and Elon Musk defending the work of the newly established DOGE. With a spending overhaul on the horizon, the administration says DOGE is aiming to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. NTD's Sam Wong was out in the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people about this plan.
DOGE is now looking to cut $2 trillion off the federal budget. So do you think it's a bit of a long shot, or do you think it's doable?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult because there'll be a lot of ramifications to it, but I think it's long overdue that we take a clear look at where we're spending money, how we're spending money, because it seems like this process has been going on for 60 years without anybody really taking a close look at it.
I think it's doable, but I don't think it's doable without cutting healthcare costs or defense costs, which seems pretty sacrosanct right now.
I think there's a lot of waste in the government, and I think we need to look at it and reduce government spending.
It's not a long shot, and it's definitely not doable. We've had these systems in place for actually decades, and now you want to change it up at the last minute is sabotage, if you ask me.
They're finding processes that have been in place since 1955, and so people that are still carrying paper that has been filled out by a human being down to another place where it's processed by a human being, even if they get to $1 trillion, if they get to 500 billion of waste and anything else, and I think it'll serve the country well.
Elon Musk yesterday was at the White House with President Trump, and then he was saying that the very idea of DOGE is to tackle unelected bureaucrats who, for some reason, have more powers than our elected officials.
And I understand how people would say that he's unelected, but it is true that Congress has the person, is supposed to be the organization that spends the money, but let's be realistic about it. There are all kinds of people who are unelected who have tremendous power in spending our federal tax dollars.
I got something against it because he's not even an elected official, And he's coming up with all these programs like going inside OPM and firing the EPA, firing all these. Look, the accident we had with the FFA.
I do think there needs to be accountability for, and not just, and for all the bureaucrats too need to be held accountable.
It's a federal government. It is a bureaucracy. How do you think things get done? If you cut jobs of people who work in the government won't work.
I think what he was talking about is returning any sort of major regulation or major change. It has to be voted on by the Senate, by the Congress. Whether the Dems or the Republicans are controlling, there's nothing wrong with returning those kind of decisions to the people.
And that is all we have for you this evening on the Capitol Report. For round-the-clock original coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live and download our NTD mobile app. From Washington, D.C., I'm Steve Lance. Have a nice evening. See you back here tomorrow.